In the heart of Dubai, inside the halls of Al-Rashid Academy, there was a name that struck both awe and dread among teachers and students alike: Layina Al-Rashid, daughter of Sheikh Karim, one of the wealthiest men in the Emirates. Layina was beauty, arrogance, and fire bundled into one. Every tutor brought in to discipline her failed miserably. Some left in tears, others quit in frustration. With her sharp tongue and sharper pride, Layina made sure no one forgot who she was. "Do you even know who my father is?" she would sneer whenever corrected. "I am not here to learn from people who polish shoes to buy bread. I am Al-Rashid blood." Professors tried stern lectures, failed. Elite coaches attempted special methods, failed. Even her father, Sheikh Karim, despite his influence, was helpless against her rebellion. The academy's halls whispered her name as a warning: "Do not cross Layina." But then, on a quiet Tuesday morning, when she had once again mocked a teacher to the point of resignation, a figure entered the classroom, not in a suit, not in silks, but in a simple faded uniform, pushing a broom. His name was Jibril, the academy's black janitor. The students chuckled as he set the broom aside, his calm eyes fixed on Layina. She tilted her chin, amused. "And what will you teach me? How to scrub floors?" But Jibril didn't flinch. He said nothing at first, just walked to the blackboard, picked up a piece of chalk, and wrote a single word. When Layina read it, her smile froze. Her face went pale. The classroom, for the first time in years, fell into complete silence. What Jibril had written was something no one expected. The chalk screeched faintly as Jibril stepped back, his eyes calm and steady. On the blackboard, in bold, careful letters, he had written a single word: Aaliyah. Layina's lips parted, the color draining from her cheeks. The classroom waited, confused. Students leaned forward, whispering, "What does it mean? Why does she look so shaken?" Her voice, usually sharp and mocking, came out barely above a whisper. Where did you hear that name?" Jibril didn't answer immediately. He placed the chalk back in its tray, dusting his hands as though he had all the time in the world. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, but it carried through every corner of the room. "Because that is the name your mother called you. The name she whispered before she died." The entire room froze. Gasps erupted. Even the teachers standing near the door exchanged shocked glances. Layina staggered back, her chair scraping against the marble floor. "You lie!" she spat, but her voice trembled. Nobody knows that name. Not even father speaks it." Jibril's gaze didn't waver. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know it, child, because I was there. I served in your family's palace long before this academy. I heard her, on her final night, singing your name like a prayer." The class was stunned into silence. The untouchable heiress, the girl who mocked and humiliated everyone, stood pale, trembling, unable to find her words. For the first time in years, Layina Al-Rashid was no longer in control. And Jibril, the janitor she thought beneath her, had frozen her with nothing more than a single word. Layina's nails dug into the desk, her knuckles white. The room's silence pressed against her chest like a weight she couldn't shake. For years she had ruled over this academy with her arrogance, but now one single word had cracked her armor. Her eyes burned as she glared at Jibril. "You dare speak her name? My mother's name is not for the lips of a janitor." Her voice echoed, but it lacked its usual venom. Students shifted uncomfortably. No one had ever seen Layina rattled before. Jibril didn't move. He stood tall, his broom resting against the wall, his calmness sharper than her rage. "I am no threat to you, child," he said quietly. "But truth doesn't bow to bloodlines. You think power shields you from learning, from respect, from discipline. Yet even your mother knew humility, and she wanted the same for you." Layina's breath caught. "Stop it," she snapped, her voice trembling. "You know nothing about her. You're making this up to humiliate me." But Jibril's eyes softened with something deeper: sorrow. "I cleaned the halls of your palace when she walked them in silence. I saw the tears she hid from the world when wealth became her cage. And I heard her last wish, Layina, that her daughter would grow not into pride, but into light." The class gasped. Students exchanged looks, some even daring to pity Layina for the first time. Humiliation and confusion warred inside her. For a moment, she looked like she might break. But pride clawed back, wrapping around her like armor. She straightened, her voice cold. Enough. You are nothing but a servant. You dare stand in my classroom pretending to teach me? You'll regret this. Jibril gave her a long, steady look. I do not teach with books or whips, child. I teach with truth, and the truth has already shaken you. He turned away, calmly picking up his broom again. But his words lingered like thunder after lightning. For the first time, Layina's empire of arrogance felt fragile. The humiliation burned in Layina's chest like fire. She, the untouchable daughter of Sheikh Karim, had been shaken by a janitor. The whispers of her classmates were daggers in her pride. By evening, she had made her decision. If he thinks he can embarrass me, I will show him his place, she muttered, her eyes flashing with vengeance. The next day, as students gathered in the grand atrium, Layina stood, tall on the marble staircase, her voice carrying across the room. Classmates, teachers, today you will see the truth. This janitor, she spat the word, pretends to be a teacher, to know secrets that are not his. Let us test him. If he fails, he will be thrown out like the dirt he cleans. Gasps filled the atrium. All eyes turned toward Jibril, who stood silently with his broom, unflinching under her challenge. Answer me this. Layina's eyes blazed. She picked up a book of advanced mathematics, flipping to a page. If you're so wise, solve what none of my tutors could teach me. Prove the theorem of Al-Khwarizmi written here. She slammed the book on the table, confident. Students leaned in. Even professors hesitated. The problem was notoriously complex. But Jibril did not touch the book. He walked calmly to the board, lifted the chalk, and in a few graceful strokes laid out the solution. Simple, precise, flawless. He didn't even pause. The room erupted in murmurs of awe. One professor whispered, "Perfect. Absolutely correct." Layina's face flushed red. Her trap had failed. But she wasn't done. She clenched her fists, shouting, "Fine. You can calculate, but can you answer this? What is the worth of a daughter who disgraces her father's name in front of the world?" The atrium fell silent. It was no longer a test of knowledge. It was war. Jibril turned slowly. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a blade. The worth of a daughter is not in her pride or her temper. It is in her heart. A daughter without humility brings only sorrow to her father's name. The words struck like thunder. Students gasped. Teachers lowered their eyes. For the first time, Layina's defiance cracked, her chest tightening with something unfamiliar, shame. And Sheikh Karim's advisor, who had arrived quietly to witness the commotion, was now watching her with narrowed, disappointed eyes. The heavy oak doors of the academy creaked open, and the grand hall fell silent. Every whisper died, every breath was held. Sheikh Karim al-Mansour, the oil tycoon whose empire spanned continents, entered, flanked by 2 guards. His presence alone made the marble pillars seem to bow. Layina froze, her arrogance draining in an instant. She had not expected her father to arrive so soon. What is this chaos? Karim's voice thundered, deep and commanding. His sharp eyes scanned the room until they landed on his daughter. Layina, why do I hear you making a spectacle of yourself before your classmates? Layina rushed down the staircase, trembling but defiant. Father, it is not my fault. This janitor dares to humiliate me. He pretends to know things, to act above his place. I only wanted to reveal him for the fraud he is. Murmurs rose. Everyone waited for Karim to crush the janitor with a single word, but instead, the Sheikh's gaze shifted to Jibril, who stood calmly, broom in hand, his back straight, his eyes unshaken. Is this true? Karim asked, his tone sharper now. Jibril bowed his head slightly. I only answered the questions your daughter asked, Sheikh. I meant no disrespect. One of the professors, unable to hold his silence, stepped forward. Sir, with respect. The boy is no fraud. What he solved today is beyond what many of us teach. He carries knowledge, deep, rare, and precise. Karim's brow furrowed. He looked at the chalkboard where Jibril's flawless equations still glowed like truth carved in stone. Layina's face twisted. Father, don't listen. He is just a janitor. He cleans floors. Enough. Karim's voice shook the walls. Layina's words died instantly. The Sheikh walked toward Jibril, circling him slowly like a hawk studying its prey. You are not what you seem, he said finally. No man sweeps floors with hands that write knowledge like this. Who are you, truly? Jibril's eyes darkened. He lowered his broom, then lifted his shirt sleeve slightly, revealing a faded crest tattooed on his arm. Gasps erupted in the hall. The crest was unmistakable. It belonged to a secret order of scholars, one long thought extinct. Karim froze. His lips parted in disbelief. That mark, I have not seen it in 20 years. And for the first time, the invincible Sheikh looked shaken. The hall was silent except for the slow echo of Karim's footsteps as he drew closer to Jibril. His eyes locked on the faded crest burned into the janitor's skin. The crest of Al-Hakimiyya, an ancient brotherhood of knowledge keepers. Karim's voice lowered, no longer thundering but trembling with memory. Where did you get this mark? Jibril's gaze did not waver. I did not get it, Sheikh. I earned it. Years before your empire rose, before the palaces and the endless oil, I was chosen as one of the keepers of truth. We studied not for wealth, but for wisdom, something your own father once believed in. The students gasped. Even the professors leaned forward, desperate to hear. Layina clutched her scarf, confused and terrified. My grandfather? She whispered. Yes, Jibril said, his voice steady. Your grandfather, Sheikh Ibrahim, was the last true patron of the order. He vowed that his heirs would honor knowledge above pride, justice above wealth. But that vow was broken. Karim's face darkened, old guilt flickering in his eyes. I was young, reckless. I chose power over the oath. I thought knowledge alone could not build an empire. And now, Jibril said firmly, your empire stands on sand. You have built towers of glass, but your daughter has inherited only arrogance. She knows nothing of the legacy that was meant for her. Layina's eyes widened. Legacy? What are you saying? Jibril turned to her, his voice softer but piercing. Your mother wore the same crest on a chain, hidden beneath her clothes. She wanted you to inherit it. Not just the emblem, but the wisdom it symbolized. I was there when she whispered it, in the last days of her life. She asked me to protect you when your father's pride would blind him. The hall erupted in shocked whispers. Students clapped hands over their mouths. Professors bowed their heads in reverence. Karim staggered back a step as if struck by lightning. His lips quivered. She told you that? Jibril nodded once. Yes, and today, Sheikh, I honor her promise. The weight of the revelation pressed on every soul in the room. For the first time, Layina's cruelty looked like dust against the storm of truth. Layina stood frozen, her breath shallow. The echo of Jibril's words clung to her like chains. Her mother's name, her mother's voice, her mother's wish. For years, she had walked the academy halls like a queen without a crown, certain that her arrogance was her birthright. Yet now, that crown felt like ash. My mother? Layina's voice trembled for the first time in her life. You knew her last words? Jibril's eyes softened. I did. And they were not words of wealth or power or control. They were words of love. She feared her daughter would drown in pride and forget compassion. She asked me to be her shadow, waiting, watching, until the moment you needed to hear the truth. Layina's eyes burned with tears she had never allowed herself to show in public. She turned sharply, as if to hide them, but it was too late. The entire room had seen. Karim, meanwhile, stood like a man carved from stone. His mighty frame seemed smaller now, hunched under invisible weight. I silenced her, he whispered, the words thick with regret. When she spoke of humility, of honor, I called it weakness. I buried her wisdom beneath palaces and prophets, and I raised my daughter the same way. And now, he looked at Layina, his voice breaking. Now she is the mirror of my failure. The hall gasped. Never had anyone heard the Sheikh speak with such vulnerability. Layina spun toward him, her tears slipping free. Father, is it true? Did mother really believe all this? Did you really? Her words cracked. Did you ignore her? Karim's silence was louder than thunder. His eyes shone with guilt. The arrogant daughter and the mighty Sheikh, both stripped bare before the truth of a janitor's voice. And yet Jibril did not gloat. He did not smile. He simply placed his broom aside, stood tall, and said quietly, It is not too late. Her blood runs in both of you. You can still honor her, but it begins with humility. For the first time in her life, Layina lowered her gaze, and for the first time in decades, Karim had no words to defend himself. A murmur rose among the students, soft at first, then louder, spreading like fire through dry grass. For years they had lived under Layina's shadow, mocked, belittled, made to feel small. But now, that shadow cracked before their very eyes. One brave voice broke the silence. "Master Jibril is right." Heads turned. It was Amal, the quietest girl in the class, her voice shaking but firm. "He speaks truth. We saw it today. His knowledge is greater than any of us, even our teachers. Why should wisdom bow to wealth?" Another student, Tariq, stood. "He solved what none of us could. He carries respect in his silence, more than we have ever seen in our halls of pride." Soon more voices joined. "Yes, he deserves honor. He is the real teacher." The professors, who had been silent in fear of the Sheikh, now stepped forward too. One elder scholar bowed his head. "Sheikh Karim, forgive me, but it is true. For too long, we allowed arrogance to rule these halls. This man, this janitor, carries the legacy of knowledge that we have abandoned. If the academy is to rise, it must rise on his shoulders." The hall erupted. Students clapped, some even standing on benches. Their cheers weren't for the billionaire, nor his daughter, but for the man with a broom who had spoken truth. Karim's face darkened with conflict. His pride screamed to silence them, to remind them of who he was. But the sound of unity was louder than his ego. His empire might command oil and gold, but here, in this hall, he was powerless. Layina clutched her scarf tighter, her lips trembling. Never had she been defied so openly. The weight of shame pressed down on her shoulders. She tried to shout, but no words came. Jibril did not bask in their praise. He only raised a hand, and slowly the cheers fell quiet. His voice cut through the silence, calm and steady. "Respect is not given to me, it is given to truth. And truth belongs to no man, no crown, no coin. It belongs to those willing to seek it, and live it." The students bowed their heads. Some whispered prayers. For the first time in his life, Sheikh Karim felt the sting of being lesser in a room full of those who once worshipped him. And the tide had turned. The Sheikh's chest rose and fell heavily. His hands, once steady as iron, trembled at his sides. For decades, he had commanded respect with money, power, and fear. But now, none of it mattered. He looked at the board, at the elegant lines of Jibril's proof, still glowing like scripture. Then at the faces of the students, their eyes bright with hope, something he had not seen in years. And finally, he looked at Layina, his daughter, his blood. She stood small and broken, her pride shattered, her tears staining her perfect silk. The sight pierced him deeper than any enemy's blade. Slowly, Sheikh Karim stepped forward until he stood directly before Jibril. For a moment, the room held its breath. Some thought he would lash out, reclaim his dominance with fury. Instead, the billionaire bent his knees. Gasps thundered across the hall. A man who had never bowed to a king or rival now lowered his head before a janitor. "Forgive me," Karim's voice broke, hoarse and raw. "Forgive me for burying wisdom beneath arrogance. Forgive me for silencing the oath of my father. And forgive me for failing the daughter of the woman I loved." Tears burned in Layina's eyes. She stumbled forward. "Father." But Karim raised a hand, silencing her. His gaze never left Jibril. "You were chosen to protect her, to remind me. And today, you fulfilled that promise. From this day forward, these halls are yours to guide, not mine." The students erupted in disbelief. Professors clutched their hearts. Never before had a sheikh surrendered authority so openly. Jibril's face remained calm, though his eyes glistened faintly. He lifted Karim gently by the shoulders. "Do not bow to me, Sheikh. Bow only to truth, and let your daughters see that humility is not weakness, but the greatest strength of all." Layina's knees gave way, and she fell before her father and Jibril, sobbing. "Mother was right. I see it now. I will change. I swear it." For the first time in years, Karim placed his hand on her head, not as a ruler, but as a father. And in that moment, the empire of pride crumbled, and the legacy of wisdom was reborn. The grand hall stood in silence, the echoes of what had just unfolded still hanging in the air. For the first time in its history, the academy had witnessed not a lesson of wealth or pride, but a lesson of humility. Sheikh Karim turned to the professors and students, his voice firm but no longer dripping with arrogance. "From this day forward, knowledge will reign in these halls. No longer will titles or wealth dictate who deserves respect. Only wisdom, discipline, and truth." He paused, then looked at Jibril. "You will not sweep these floors again. Instead, you will guide these students, and my daughter, toward the legacy my father once dreamed of." The students erupted in cheers. Amal, Tariq, and dozens of others clapped, their faces glowing with hope. Even the professors bowed to Jibril, acknowledging him as their equal, if not their superior. Layina, still on her knees, lifted her tear-streaked face. "Master Jibril, will you teach me?" she whispered. Jibril's gaze softened. He extended his hand to her, helping her rise. "Yes, but learning begins not with pride, but with humility. Can you promise me that?" She nodded fiercely, her arrogance stripped away. "I promise, for my mother and for myself." Kareem's shoulders seemed lighter as he looked at his daughter, truly looked at her, not as an heir to his wealth, but as the child of the woman he had once loved deeply. His eyes shone with regret, but also with hope. "I will honor her too," Kareem said quietly. "No more silencing her memory. From today, the academy will bear her name. Let the world remember Layina's mother not as the wife of a sheikh, but as the guardian of wisdom." The hall roared in approval. Tears and applause mingled with shouts of joy. And in that moment, the walls of arrogance crumbled, replaced by something far stronger: unity, humility, and truth. As Jibril lifted his broom once more, not as a servant's tool, but as a symbol of clearing away ignorance, his voice carried through the hall. "True wealth lies not in the gold we hoard, but in the wisdom we share." And thus, a new legacy was born. Pride is a fortress, tall, glittering, and seemingly unshakable. But like glass, it shatters with the smallest touch of truth. Wealth can buy palaces, servants, and power, yet it cannot buy respect, nor can it silence wisdom. Humility, however, builds bridges where arrogance builds walls. It allows kings to learn from servants, fathers to hear their children, and students to rise above their fears. True greatness is never found in gold or titles, but in the courage to accept when we are wrong, and the strength to change. The richest man is not the one who commands armies or owns empires. The richest man is the one who can bow before truth, lift others higher than himself, and leave behind a legacy that outlives wealth. Because in the end, power fades, pride dies, but wisdom endures forever.